I went to visit my daughter in another state and found the cupboards empty. Honey, why are you starving if I send you $7,000 every month for expenses? I asked. I use the money to pay for my new car, my son-in-law replied proudly. So I did something that left him frozen in place. Subscribe to the channel for more stories like this and comment the city you're watching from. I never thought a simple visit to see my daughter would shatter everything I believed about my family. At 60 years old, I thought I had seen enough of life's surprises, but nothing could have prepared me for what I discovered that Tuesday afternoon in Phoenix. The flight from Denver had been smooth, and I was looking forward to spending a few days with Aurora and Jacob. It had been almost 6 months since my last visit, and I missed my daughter terribly. Since her mother passed away 8 years ago, Aurora had become the center of my world. Every month, without fail, I sent her $7,000 to help with expenses. It wasn't a burden for me. My retirement was comfortable, and I wanted to make sure she never struggled the way her mother and I had in our early years. I knocked on the door of their modest 2-bedroom apartment, expecting to see Aurora's bright smile. Instead, Jacob answered, looking surprised and not particularly pleased to see me. "Raymond," he said, not moving aside to let me in. "Aurora didn't mention you were coming." "I wanted to surprise her," I replied, trying to peer past him into the apartment. "Is she home?" He reluctantly stepped aside, and I walked into what should have been a welcoming living space, but something felt off immediately. The apartment was sparse, almost empty. The furniture looked worn and mismatched, nothing like the comfortable home I had imagined my monthly contributions were helping to maintain. Aurora emerged from the kitchen, and my heart sank. She looked thin, too thin. Her cheekbones were more prominent than I remembered, and her clothes hung loose on her frame. But what struck me most was the way she avoided making direct eye contact. "Dad, what a surprise," she said, forcing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I wasn't expecting you." I hugged her, and I could feel how frail she had become. "Sweetheart, you look like you've lost weight. Are you feeling okay?" She glanced quickly at Jacob before answering. "I'm fine, Dad. Just been busy with work." Something in her tone made me uneasy, but I decided not to push. Instead, I suggested we grab some lunch together. "How about we go to that Italian place you used to love? My treat." "Actually," Jacob interjected, "we were just about to head out to run some errands. Maybe dinner instead." I was about to agree when Aurora's stomach growled audibly. She looked embarrassed, pressing her hand against her abdomen as if she could silence it. "When did you last eat?" I asked, concern creeping into my voice. "This morning," she said quickly, but Jacob shot her a look that made her add, "Well, I had some coffee." That's when I decided to take a closer look around. I excused myself to use the bathroom, but instead, I quietly made my way to the kitchen. What I found there made my blood run cold. The refrigerator was nearly empty. Just some condiments, a few eggs, and what looked like leftover takeout from several days ago. The cabinets told the same story. Bare shelves with only the most basic items. This wasn't the kitchen of someone receiving $7,000 a month for living expenses. I returned to the living room, my mind racing. "Aurora, honey, can we talk privately for a minute?" Jacob immediately spoke up. "Anything you need to say to Aurora, you can say in front of me. We don't keep secrets." The possessiveness in his tone set off alarm bells, but I kept my voice calm. "I just wanted to ask about her mother's ring. It's a family matter." Aurora looked confused, but she followed me onto the small balcony. Once we were alone, I took her hands in mine. They were cold and slightly trembling. "Sweetheart, I need you to be honest with me. Are you eating regularly?" She pulled her hands away, wrapping her arms around herself. "Dad, I'm fine. You don't need to worry about me." "Aurora, I saw the kitchen. There's barely any food in there. What's happening to the money I send you every month?" Her face went pale, and she glanced back toward the sliding door where Jacob was watching us through the glass. "The money, well, we use it for expenses, like you said." "What kind of expenses? Because it's clearly not going toward groceries." She was quiet for a long moment, and I could see tears forming in her eyes. "Dad, can we please not talk about this right now?" But I couldn't let it go. Something was very wrong, and my daughter was clearly suffering. "Aurora, $7,000 a month should be more than enough for you to live comfortably. Where is that money going?" Before she could answer, Jacob slid open the door and joined us on the balcony. "Is everything okay out here?" I looked at him directly. "I was just asking Aurora about the monthly money I send. I'm concerned because she seems to be struggling financially despite my support." Jacob's expression shifted, and for a moment, I saw something cold flash in his eyes. Then he smiled, but it didn't feel genuine. "Oh, the money you send, that's been incredibly helpful, Raymond. We really appreciate it." "Helpful how?" I pressed, "because my daughter appears to be going hungry." That's when Jacob said something that stopped my heart. "Well, we use it for important things, like my car payment." He said it with such casual pride, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "I just got this amazing new BMW last month. The payments are pretty steep, but hey, that's what the money's for, right?" I stared at him in disbelief. "You're using my daughter's support money to pay for your car while she's starving?" Jacob shrugged. "Aurora doesn't really need much. She's always been good at getting by with less. Besides, I need reliable transportation for work." The casual cruelty of his words hit me like a physical blow. I looked at Aurora, waiting for her to speak up, to defend herself, but she just stood there with her head down as if she had accepted this as normal. "Aurora," I said, my voice barely above a whisper, "did you know about this?" She finally looked up at me, and I saw years of defeat in her eyes. "Dad, it's complicated. Jacob handles our finances, and he says this is the best way to manage things." I felt something inside me break. My monthly $7,000, money I sent out of love, money meant to ensure my daughter's well-being, was being used to fund her husband's luxury while she literally went without food. Jacob must have sensed my shock because he kept talking, apparently oblivious to how horrific his words sounded. "The BMW gets great gas mileage, and it makes a good impression when I meet with potential clients. Aurora understands that investments like this benefit both of us in the long run." I couldn't speak. I couldn't move. All I could think about was how I had failed my daughter, how my generosity had somehow enabled this nightmare. Aurora was standing right there, thin and defeated, while this man spoke about starving her as if it were a sound financial strategy. Jacob continued, completely missing the horror on my face. "Plus, Aurora's always been low maintenance. She doesn't need much to be happy, do you, sweetheart?" The way he said "sweetheart" made my skin crawl. It wasn't affection, it was ownership. I finally found my voice, though it came out rougher than I intended. "You're telling me that you take money meant for my daughter's basic needs and use it to pay for a luxury car?" "It's not just any car," Jacob said defensively. "It's a smart investment, and Aurora agreed to it." I looked at my daughter again, searching her face for any sign of the strong, independent young woman she used to be. Instead, I saw someone who had been worn down, convinced that her own needs didn't matter. That's when I realized the full scope of what was happening. This wasn't just financial abuse, it was complete psychological manipulation. Jacob had somehow convinced Aurora that she didn't deserve basic necessities while he deserved luxury. Standing on that balcony, looking at my hollow-eyed daughter and her smugly satisfied husband, I understood that everything I thought I knew about their marriage was a lie. The money I had been sending out of love had become a weapon used against the very person I was trying to protect. And for the first time in my 60 years, I truly understood what it meant to feel completely helpless in the face of evil. The rest of that day passed in a blur of forced conversation and mounting dread. Jacob insisted on taking us to dinner at an expensive steakhouse, and I watched in horror as he ordered the most expensive items on the menu while Aurora quietly asked for just a salad. When the server brought bread to the table, I noticed how Aurora's eyes lit up briefly before she caught herself and pushed the basket away. "I'm not very hungry," she said, but I had seen the way she looked at that bread. Jacob, meanwhile, was regaling me with stories about his BMW, describing every feature in detail as if he were trying to justify the purchase. "The leather seats are Italian," he said between bites of his $40 steak, "and the sound system is absolutely incredible." I barely touched my food. All I could think about was Aurora's empty kitchen and the pride in Jacob's voice when he talked about using her money for his car payments. Every word he spoke felt like another nail in the coffin of my trust. After dinner, Jacob suggested we go back to their apartment to relax, but I could see Aurora was exhausted. The simple act of eating a full meal seemed to have drained what little energy she had left. "I should probably head back to my hotel," I said, though every instinct screamed at me not to leave Aurora alone with him. "Nonsense," Jacob replied quickly. "You should stay here tonight. We have a couch you can use." I glanced at Aurora, hoping she would speak up, but she just nodded silently. I realized then that she rarely spoke when Jacob was around, and when she did, it was usually to agree with whatever he had already decided. That night, lying on their uncomfortable couch and listening to the sounds of their thin-walled apartment, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Aurora's hollow cheeks and remembered the way she had looked at that bread basket with such longing. Around 3 in the morning, I heard footsteps in the kitchen. I quietly got up and peered around the corner. Aurora was standing in front of the open refrigerator, staring at the nearly empty shelves. She reached for one of the few remaining eggs, then stopped and closed the door without taking anything. I wanted to go to her, to tell her to eat whatever she wanted, but something held me back. I had a feeling that if Jacob discovered Aurora eating unplanned food, there would be consequences. Instead, I retreated to the couch and spent the rest of the night planning what I would say to her in the morning. But when morning came, Jacob was already awake and hovering around Aurora like a guard dog. Every time I tried to have a private conversation with my daughter, he found a reason to interrupt or insert himself into the discussion. "Aurora's always been a little dramatic about food," he said when I suggested we go grocery shopping together. "She's just trying to stay in shape. You know how women are about their weight." The casual misogyny in his comment made my jaw clench, but what really angered me was the way Aurora immediately nodded in agreement, as if she had been trained to support his version of reality no matter how twisted it was. When I finally had to leave for my flight back to Denver, Aurora walked me to the door while Jacob waited in the living room. This was my chance. "Sweetheart," I said quietly, "I want you to know that you can call me anytime. If you need anything, food, money, a place to stay, anything at all." She looked over her shoulder to make sure Jacob couldn't hear us. "Dad, I'm okay, really. Jacob takes good care of me." "Aurora, you're clearly not eating enough. That's not taking care of you." Her eyes filled with tears, but she blinked them away quickly. "You don't understand how hard it is for him. He's under a lot of pressure at work, and having a nice car helps him feel confident. I can manage with less." "You shouldn't have to manage with less. The money I send is supposed to ensure that you don't have to choose between your needs and his wants." "It's not that simple, Dad. Jacob handles our finances because he's better with money than I am. He says if I managed it myself, we'd probably end up in debt." I felt my heart break a little more. This was textbook financial abuse, but Aurora had been so thoroughly manipulated that she believed she was the problem. "Has he ever let you see the bank statements? Do you know where all the money goes each month?" She shook her head. "He shows me the important stuff. I trust him." "Aurora, listen to me. No one who truly cares about you would let you go hungry while they drive a luxury car." For a moment, I saw a flicker of doubt in her eyes. But then Jacob's voice called from the living room. "Aurora, your dad's going to miss his flight if you keep talking." The moment was lost. Aurora's walls went back up, and she gave me a forced smile. I love you, Dad. Don't worry about me. I hugged her goodbye, feeling how thin she had become, and made a promise to myself that this wouldn't continue. During the flight home, I replayed every conversation, every interaction, every red flag I had ignored during previous visits. Jacob's controlling behavior hadn't started overnight. Looking back, I could see the pattern. He had gradually isolated Aurora from her friends, convincing her that they were jealous of their relationship. He had discouraged her from pursuing hobbies or interests that didn't involve him. He had slowly taken control of their finances under the guise of being better with money. And I had enabled it all by sending money that allowed him to maintain complete control over Aurora's life. The more I thought about it, the angrier I became. Not just at Jacob, but at myself. I had been so focused on being the generous father, the provider, that I had failed to see what my money was actually funding. By the time I landed in Denver, I had made a decision. I wasn't going to confront Jacob directly. Men like him were expert manipulators who would just find new ways to twist the situation. Instead, I was going to do something he wouldn't expect. I was going to investigate exactly who my daughter had married and what he was really doing with my money. But more importantly, I was going to find a way to help Aurora see the truth without putting her in danger. Because one thing had become crystal clear during those 24 hours in Phoenix: Jacob wasn't just financially abusing my daughter. He was systematically destroying her sense of self-worth, convincing her that she didn't deserve basic necessities while he lived in luxury. And that was something I simply couldn't allow to continue. As I drove home from the airport, I realized that being a good father sometimes meant making difficult decisions. For too long, I had confused enabling with helping. I had thought that sending money was enough to show I cared. But caring meant protecting Aurora from people who would exploit my love for her. It meant being willing to face the uncomfortable truth that my generosity had become part of the problem. Jacob had made one crucial mistake. He had been so confident in his control over Aurora, so certain that I would continue blindly sending money, that he had revealed his true nature to me. Now I knew exactly what kind of man I was dealing with, and I was going to make sure he regretted ever laying eyes on my daughter. The war for Aurora's freedom was about to begin, and Jacob had no idea what was coming. The week after I returned from Phoenix, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Aurora's hollow cheeks and remembered the casual cruelty in Jacob's voice when he talked about using her support money for his car payments. I had spent 40 years building a successful construction business, and I knew how to spot a con artist when I saw one. Jacob had all the classic signs: the charm, the justifications, the way he made his victim feel responsible for his behavior. But knowing what he was didn't tell me how to stop him. I started by doing what I should have done before Aurora married him: a thorough background check. I called my friend Mike, who ran a private investigation firm, and asked him to look into Jacob Martinez's financial history. What Mike found made my blood run cold. "Raymond, this guy is a professional," Mike said when he called me 3 days later. "He's done this before. 3 times, actually." I sat down heavily in my kitchen chair, gripping the phone. "What do you mean, 3 times?" 3 previous relationships where he moved in with women who had access to money, either through family support or their own savings. In each case, he gradually took control of their finances, isolated them from friends and family, and bled them dry before moving on to the next victim. My hands started shaking. What happened to those women? The first one, Sarah, lost her house and had to move back in with her parents. The second one, Maria, ended up filing for bankruptcy. The third one, Jennifer, tried to get a restraining order against him, but he disappeared before the court date. I felt sick. How did you find all this? Court records, credit reports, social media posts from the women's friends and family. This guy leaves a trail of destruction wherever he goes. And Raymond? Mike paused. There's something else. He's got gambling debts. Big ones. The kind that make people desperate. That explained everything. Jacob wasn't just a garden variety user. He was feeding a gambling addiction with my daughter's support money. Aurora wasn't just a victim. She was his current source of funding for his addiction. Mike, I need you to keep digging. I want to know everything about this man. His debts, his habits, his associates. Everything. You got it. But Raymond, be careful. Men like this can be dangerous when they're cornered. After I hung up, I sat in my kitchen for a long time, staring at the phone. I had always prided myself on being a good judge of character, but Jacob had fooled me completely. He had played the role of the devoted husband so well that I had never questioned his motives. But more troubling was the realization that Aurora was probably in real danger. If Jacob was desperate enough to starve his wife to fund his gambling, what would he do if that money source was threatened? I needed a plan that would protect Aurora while exposing Jacob's true nature. Direct confrontation was out of the question. It would only put Aurora at greater risk and give Jacob time to manipulate the situation further. The next morning, I made a decision that went against every parental instinct I had. I stopped the monthly transfers to Aurora's account. It wasn't easy. For 8 years since her mother died, I had sent that money religiously. It had become my way of staying connected to Aurora, of feeling like I was still taking care of her even from a distance. But now I understood that my money was actually harming her. Instead, I opened a new savings account in Aurora's name only, an account that Jacob couldn't access even if he tried. Every month, instead of sending money to their joint account, I would deposit $7,000 into this secret account. When Aurora was ready to leave Jacob, she would have the resources to start over. But I knew that stopping the money would trigger a reaction from Jacob, and I needed to be prepared for whatever came next. I didn't have to wait long. 3 days after I missed the monthly transfer, my phone rang. It was Jacob, and he was furious. "Raymond, what the hell is going on?" he demanded without any greeting. "The money didn't come through this month." I kept my voice calm and measured. "I've decided to handle Aurora's support differently going forward." "What does that mean? Aurora is counting on that money. We have bills to pay." "I'm sure you do, like your BMW payment." There was a pause, and when Jacob spoke again, his voice had a threatening edge. "Look, old man, I don't know what Aurora told you, but we had an agreement. That money comes every month, no questions asked. The agreement was that I would support my daughter. I never agreed to fund your lifestyle while she goes hungry. Aurora's not going hungry. She's on a diet. Women are always on diets." The casual dismissal of Aurora's suffering made my jaw clench. "I've seen my daughter, Jacob. I know what starvation looks like. You don't know what you're talking about. Aurora and I have a good thing going here, and you are going to mess it up with your interference." "My interference? I'm her father. And I'm her husband, which means I have more say in her life than you do." The possessiveness in his voice sent chills down my spine. This wasn't a man who loved my daughter. This was a man who owned her. "The money stops now, Jacob. If you want to support Aurora, get a job." "I have a job." "Really? Doing what?" Silence. Then, "I'm in between positions right now, but I have several promising leads." More lies. According to Mike's investigation, Jacob hadn't held steady employment in over 2 years. He moved from woman to woman, living off their resources while claiming to be between jobs. Well, I'm sure one of those promising leads will work out soon. In the meantime, Aurora will need to budget more carefully. "Raymond, you don't understand. Without that money, we can't make our payments. Aurora will lose her apartment." "Aurora's apartment? I thought you said the money was for both of you." "It is, but look, this is complicated. You can't just cut us off without warning." "I can, and I have. If Aurora needs help, she can call me directly." "She won't call you. She's loyal to me." The way he said loyal made it sound like a threat. I realized that Jacob wasn't just confident in his control over Aurora, he was warning me that she wouldn't reach out for help even if she was desperate. We'll see about that. Jacob's voice dropped to a menacing whisper. You have no idea what you're messing with, old man. Aurora is my wife. She belongs to me now. And if you try to interfere with my marriage, there will be consequences. The line went dead. I sat there holding the phone, my heart racing. Preserve the original language of the text, not the charming son-in-law who made small talk about his car, but a predator who viewed my daughter as his property. But his threat had also revealed something important. He was scared. Men like Jacob relied on maintaining control through manipulation and isolation. By cutting off his funding, I had disrupted his sense of security. He was going to make mistakes, and when he did, I would be ready. I called Mike immediately. I need you to accelerate the investigation. Jacob just threatened me, and I think Aurora might be in danger. What kind of threat? I told him about the conversation, and Mike was quiet for a moment. Raymond, I think you should consider involving the police. With what evidence? He hasn't physically harmed Aurora, and emotional abuse is hard to prove. Financial abuse is a crime in most states, and if he's using her support money to fund gambling debts, that could be considered theft. But Aurora would have to press charges, and she won't. She doesn't even realize she's being abused. Mike sighed. Then we need to get evidence that will open her eyes. Something so clear that even Jacob can't spin it. What kind of evidence? Give me another week. I'm tracking his movements, his finances, his associates. If he's as desperate as you think he is, he's going to do something stupid. And when he does, we'll be watching. That night, I couldn't eat dinner. I kept thinking about Aurora alone in that apartment with a man who had just threatened her father. I wondered if Jacob would take his anger out on her, if he would blame her for the money stopping. I picked up the phone 3 times to call her, but each time I put it down. If Jacob was monitoring her calls, reaching out to her now could make things worse. Instead, I did something I hadn't done since my wife died. I prayed. I prayed that Aurora would stay safe, that she would find the strength to see through Jacob's lies, and that I would find a way to save her before it was too late. Because one thing was becoming increasingly clear. Jacob wasn't just financially abusing my daughter. He was preparing to destroy her completely. And the only thing standing between Aurora and total ruin was a 60-year-old man who had already made too many mistakes. But this time, I wasn't going to fail her. This time, I was going to fight back with everything I had. The question was whether I would be strong enough to win. The silence from Phoenix was deafening. For 2 weeks after Jacob's threatening phone call, I heard nothing from either him or Aurora. Every day, I checked my phone obsessively, hoping for a message from my daughter, dreading what Jacob might be doing to her in retaliation for my cutting off the money. Mike called me regularly with updates from his investigation, and each piece of information painted a darker picture. Preserve the original language of the text to various gambling establishments, some of them the kind of places that didn't accept excuses. His BMW, the car he was so proud of, was actually leased under Aurora's name and social security number, meaning she was liable for payments, even though she probably didn't know it existed. But the most disturbing discovery came on a Tuesday morning when Mike called with an edge of urgency in his voice. Raymond, you need to sit down for this one. I was already sitting at my kitchen table with my morning coffee, but I gripped the mug tighter. What did you find? Jacob's been forging Aurora's signature on loan applications, credit cards, personal loans, even a second mortgage application on an apartment she doesn't own. He's systematically destroying her credit while building up debt in her name. The coffee mug slipped from my hands and shattered on the floor. How much debt? So far, nearly $60,000 that I can document. And Raymond, that's just what I found so far. There could be more. I stared at the broken pieces of ceramic scattered across my kitchen floor. each shard reflecting the morning light like tiny mirrors of my shattered faith in human decency. Can we prove he forged her signature? I'm working on it. But even if we can prove it, the damage to Aurora's credit is already done. She'll spend years trying to recover from this, assuming she ever finds out about it. What do you mean, assuming she finds out? Think about it, Raymond. Jacob handles all their finances. He gets the mail, he manages the accounts, he controls what information Aurora sees. She probably has no idea that her credit is being destroyed. I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of my failure as a father. While I had been sending money to help my daughter, that money had been enabling her financial destruction. Every dollar I transferred had given Jacob more time to commit fraud in Aurora's name. Mike, I need you to document everything. Every forged signature, every fraudulent application, every illegal transaction. I want a complete record of what this man has done to my daughter. I'm already on it. But Raymond, there's something else. Jacob's been in contact with other women online. Dating sites, social media. He's already looking for his next victim. The room spun around me. Not only was Jacob destroying Aurora financially, but he was already planning his escape. My daughter was being used up and discarded like a disposable resource. How long do you think she has before he moves on? Based on his pattern with previous victims, I'd say a few months at most. Once he's maximized the damage to her credit and there's no more money coming from you, he'll disappear and leave her with the debt. I had to grip the edge of the table to steady myself. We need to move faster. Agreed. But we also need to be smart. If Jacob realizes we're onto him, he might accelerate his timeline, or worse, take his anger out on Aurora. That afternoon, I made a decision that went against every instinct I had as a father. Instead of calling Aurora directly, I sent her a carefully worded text message. Sweetheart, I've been thinking about you. I know things have been difficult lately. If you ever need anything or just want to talk, I'm here for you. Love, Dad. I kept it vague enough that Jacob wouldn't see it as a threat, but personal enough that Aurora would know I was thinking about her specifically. 3 hours later, my phone rang. It was Aurora, and she sounded terrible. Dad? Her voice was shaky, almost whispered. Aurora, sweetheart, are you okay? I don't know. Things have been really hard since you stopped sending money. Jacob he's not himself. My heart raced. What do you mean he's not himself? He's angry all the time. He says it's my fault that you cut us off. That I must have said something to turn you against him. Aurora, you didn't do anything wrong. I stopped sending money because I realized it wasn't actually helping you. But Dad, we really need it. Jacob says we're going to lose the apartment if we can't make the payments. I took a deep breath, choosing my words carefully. Sweetheart, can I ask you something? Do you know exactly what bills that money was paying? Jacob handles all that. He's better with finances than I am. When was the last time you saw a bank statement or a credit report? Why would I need to see those things? Jacob takes care of everything. The innocent trust in her voice broke my heart. Aurora, every adult should know their own financial situation. Has Jacob ever shown you where the money goes each month? He tells me about the important things, like the car payment and insurance and utilities. What about groceries? What about your personal expenses? There was a long pause. He says I don't need much, that I should be grateful for what I have. I closed my eyes, fighting back tears. My daughter had been so completely brainwashed that she believed she didn't deserve basic necessities. Aurora, listen to me very carefully. You deserve to eat regularly. You deserve to have your own money for personal expenses. You deserve to know what's happening with your finances. What Jacob is doing to you isn't normal, and it isn't love. Dad, don't say things like that. Jacob loves me. He takes care of me. Sweetheart, someone who loves you doesn't let you go hungry while they drive a luxury car. It's not like that. You don't understand our situation. I could hear Jacob's words coming out of her mouth, and it made me sick. But I also knew that pushing too hard would only drive her further away. Okay, I said gently, I just want you to know that if you ever need help, any kind of help, you can call me, day or night. I know, Dad. But things will get better once Jacob finds a new job. Is he actively looking for work? He's waiting to hear back from several promising opportunities. More lies that Aurora had been trained to repeat. According to Mike's investigation, Jacob spent his days gambling online and chatting with other women, not job hunting. Aurora, can I send you some money directly, just for groceries and personal items? Jacob says all money should go through our joint account so he can budget properly. What if I sent it to your personal account? I don't have a personal account anymore. Jacob consolidated everything to make it easier to manage. Another classic abuser move, eliminating the victim's financial independence. Jacob had systematically removed every escape route Aurora might have used. Sweetheart, do you remember your mother's maiden name? Of course. Why? I'm going to open a savings account for you using that information. It will be in your name only. And I'll put money in it each month. You don't have to tell Jacob about it, and you can use it for whatever you need. Dad, I can't keep secrets from my husband. This isn't a secret, Aurora. This is you having your own resources, which every adult should have. Jacob says that separate accounts are a sign that couples don't trust each other. Jacob says a lot of things, but I'm your father, and I'm telling you that having your own financial security is important. We talked for a few more minutes, but I could tell she was uncomfortable with the conversation. Jacob had trained her well. Any suggestion of financial independence was immediately seen as disloyalty to their marriage. After we hung up, I immediately called my bank and opened a savings account in Aurora's name using her mother's maiden name and her social security number, which I had from her tax documents. I transferred $7,000 into it immediately, then set up automatic monthly deposits. Whether Aurora used it or not, she would have resources available when she finally understood what Jacob was doing to her. But I wasn't going to wait for that realization to come naturally. Mike had given me an idea, and it was time to put it into action. If Jacob was already looking for his next victim, then he was vulnerable. Men like him were most dangerous when they felt secure, but they made mistakes when they felt threatened. It was time to make Jacob very uncomfortable. The next morning, I drove to the bank and withdrew $10,000 in cash. Then I booked a flight to Phoenix. Jacob had made one crucial error in his threat to me. He had assumed that I was just another elderly man who would back down when confronted with aggression. He was about to learn how wrong he was. I had spent 40 years building a construction business in one of the toughest industries in America. I had dealt with con artists, criminals, and bullies before. Jacob might have fooled my daughter, but he wasn't going to fool me. And unlike Aurora, I had nothing to lose by fighting back. The war for my daughter's freedom was about to begin in earnest, and this time I was bringing everything I had learned in 6 decades of life to the battlefield. Jacob wanted to play games with my family? Fine, but he was about to discover that some games have very serious consequences. I didn't tell Aurora I was coming to Phoenix. This time, the element of surprise was crucial. I checked into a hotel near their apartment and spent the first day watching their building from across the street, noting Jacob's routine. What I observed confirmed everything Mike had told me. Jacob left the apartment every morning around 10, drove his BMW to a casino downtown, and didn't return until late afternoon. He wasn't job hunting. He was gambling away whatever money he could scrape together, probably using credit cards that Aurora didn't know about. On the second day, I followed him. The casino was one of those flashy places designed to separate desperate people from their money as efficiently as possible. I watched Jacob walk in like he owned the place, greeting the staff by name. This wasn't casual gambling. This was a full-blown addiction. I waited until he was settled at a poker table, then I made my move. "Excuse me," I said to the floor manager, a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s who looked like she'd seen every type of degenerate gambler imaginable. "I need to report suspected credit card fraud." She looked up from her clipboard with interest. What kind of fraud? I pulled out the documentation Mike had compiled, copies of credit applications with forged signatures, evidence of accounts opened in Aurora's name without her knowledge, proof that Jacob had been using her identity to fuel his gambling. This man has been using his wife's identity to obtain credit, then using that credit to gamble here. The wife has no knowledge of these accounts. The manager's expression hardened as she reviewed the documents. Casino operators hated fraud almost as much as they hated people who couldn't pay their debts. Both were bad for business. "We'll need to investigate this immediately," she said. "Can you wait here while I make some calls?" 20 minutes later, casino security was escorting a very confused and very angry Jacob out of the building. I watched from across the parking lot as they explained that he was banned from the premises pending an investigation into fraudulent credit use. Jacob's face went through several emotions: confusion, anger, and finally a cold calculation that made my skin crawl. He knew exactly what had happened, and he knew someone was on to him. But he didn't know it was me. I followed him back to the apartment building and waited. An hour later, I knocked on the door. Aurora answered, and the change in her appearance over the past month was shocking. She had lost even more weight, and there were dark circles under her eyes that spoke of sleepless nights and constant stress. "Dad?" She looked genuinely surprised to see me. "What are you doing here?" "I came to check on you. Can I come in?" She glanced nervously over her shoulder. "Jacob's not in a very good mood today. Maybe this isn't the best time." "All the more reason for me to be here." Before she could protest, I stepped inside. Jacob was pacing the living room like a caged animal, his phone pressed to his ear. When he saw me, his face darkened. "I'll call you back," he said into the phone, then hung up and turned to face me. "What the hell are you doing here?" "I came to see my daughter." "Your daughter is fine. She doesn't need you checking up on her." I looked at Aurora, who was standing between us like she was trying to prevent a physical confrontation. "Aurora, can we talk privately?" "She doesn't need to talk to you privately," Jacob snapped. "Anything you have to say to her, you can say in front of me." "Actually, Jacob, I think what I have to say is something Aurora needs to hear without your interpretation." His eyes narrowed. "What's that supposed to mean?" I pulled out a folder from my jacket and set it on their coffee table. "Aurora, these are copies of financial documents that have been opened in your name over the past year. Credit cards, personal loans, even a mortgage application for a property you've never seen." Aurora looked confused. "I don't understand. Jacob handles our finances." "Yes, he does. By forging your signature and using your social security number to obtain credit that he then uses to gamble." Jacob stepped forward aggressively. "That's a serious accusation, old man. You better be able to prove it." "I can." I opened the folder and spread the documents across the table. "Aurora, look at these signatures. Are they yours?" She picked up one of the credit card applications. Studying the signature line. This doesn't look like my handwriting." "Because it's not. Jacob signed your name to these applications." Jacob's face was red with rage. "You have no idea what you're talking about. Aurora signed those herself. She just forgot." "Aurora," I said gently, "do you remember applying for a credit card with Pinnacle Financial last month?" She shook her head slowly. "I've never heard of Pinnacle Financial. But according to this application, you applied for a $10,000 credit line with them, and according to the usage statements, that credit line has been maxed out at the Sunrise Casino." Aurora looked at Jacob with growing confusion. "You told me you were going to job interviews, but you've been going to a casino?" "I was networking," Jacob said quickly. "A lot of business gets done at those places. You wouldn't understand." "Jacob," I said, my voice deadly calm, "the casino banned you today for suspected credit fraud. They have security footage of you using credit cards that don't belong to you." The blood drained from Aurora's face. "Jacob, is this true?" "It's all lies. Your father is trying to break us up because he can't stand that you chose me over him." But Aurora was looking at the documents now, really looking at them. "Jacob, this says I owe $23,000 on this card alone. How is that possible?" Those numbers are wrong. Your father probably made fake documents to try to turn you against me. I pulled out my phone and dialed a number. Aurora, this is the customer service number for Pinnacle Financial. Call them and ask about the account in your name. She took the phone with trembling hands and dialed. I watched her face as she spoke to the customer service representative, providing her social security number and date of birth for verification. "Yes, I understand," she said quietly. $23,412? "And when was the last payment made?" A pause. "No payment has ever been made on this account?" She hung up and stared at Jacob with an expression I had never seen before, a mixture of betrayal, horror, and dawning realization. "Jacob, they say I owe over $23,000 and that no payment has ever been made. Where is this debt coming from?" "Aurora, baby, let me explain." "No." Her voice was stronger than I had heard it in months. "I want to see all of our financial statements, right now." "You don't understand money the way I do. It's complicated." "Show me the statements, Jacob." For the first time since I had known him, Jacob looked uncertain. "Aurora, you're upset. You're not thinking clearly. Why don't we talk about this tomorrow when you've had time to calm down?" "I am calm. I want to see our bank statements, our credit reports, and documentation for every account that has my name on it." Jacob's mask was slipping. The charming, confident man who had convinced my daughter to trust him completely was being replaced by something uglier. "You're being ridiculous, Aurora. I've been taking care of everything perfectly. You never had to worry about bills or finances because I handled it all for you. By using my identity to rack up debt I didn't know about, I was providing for us. Everything I did was for our future." "What future, Jacob? According to these documents, I'm financially ruined. My credit is destroyed. How is that providing for our future?" Jacob looked at me with pure hatred. "This is your fault. She was happy before you started filling her head with lies." Aurora wasn't happy, Jacob. Aurora was starving. She was on a diet. She was being financially abused by a gambling addict who was using her identity to fund his addiction. Jacob lunged toward me, but Aurora stepped between us. For the first time in months, she looked like the strong woman I remembered. "Stop it, both of you. Just stop." She turned to Jacob. "I want you to leave." "Aurora, baby, you don't mean that. You're confused. Your father is manipulating you." "I said leave, Jacob. This is my apartment too. You can't just kick me out." "Actually," I said, pulling out another document, "according to the lease agreement, this apartment is rented solely in Aurora's name. Jacob has no legal right to be here if she doesn't want him here." Jacob stared at the lease, realizing that in his arrogance, he had made another mistake. He had put everything in Aurora's name to avoid responsibility, but that also meant he had no legal claim to anything. "Aurora, if you kick me out, you'll never see me again." She looked at him for a long moment, and I could see the internal struggle on her face. Despite everything, part of her still cared about this man who had manipulated and used her. "Maybe that would be for the best," she said quietly. Jacob's face twisted with rage. "You'll regret this, Aurora. You have no idea how to take care of yourself. Without me, you'll fall apart." "We'll see about that." He grabbed a few items from around the apartment and headed for the door. But before he left, he turned back one more time. "You think you've won something here, old man? This isn't over. Aurora will come crawling back to me within a week. She always does." The door slammed behind him, leaving Aurora and me alone in the sudden silence. Aurora collapsed onto the couch, burying her face in her hands. "Oh God, Dad, what have I done? How did I let this happen?" I sat beside her and put my arm around her shoulders. "Sweetheart, this isn't your fault. Jacob is a professional manipulator. He's done this to other women before you. How could I have been so stupid? How could I not see what he was doing? Because he's very good at what he does, and because you trusted him. There's nothing wrong with trusting someone you love. But I've ruined everything. My credit, my finances.
My life. Aurora, listen to me. The damage Jacob did can be fixed. It will take time and effort, but it can be fixed. What matters is that you're safe now. She looked up at me with tears streaming down her face. Dad, I'm so sorry. I chose him over you, and I was so wrong. You have nothing to apologize for. I'm just glad you're okay. But even as I held my daughter and tried to comfort her, I knew this wasn't really over. Jacob's parting words had been a threat, and men like him didn't just disappear quietly. He would be back, and next time he would be even more dangerous. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of damage control and healing. I extended my stay in Phoenix indefinitely, helping Aurora navigate the complex process of identity theft recovery and financial rehabilitation. We spent days on the phone with credit card companies, filing police reports, and working with fraud investigators to document the extent of Jacob's crimes. The numbers were staggering.
Jacob had opened 14 different credit accounts in Aurora's name, accumulating over $87,000 in debt. He had forged her signature on loan applications, used her social security number to obtain cash advances, and even applied for a second mortgage on a property she had never seen. The financial devastation was almost complete. But what amazed me was Aurora's resilience. Once the fog of manipulation had lifted, she attacked the problem with a determination I hadn't seen since she was a child. She documented every fraudulent account, gathered evidence of Jacob's forged signatures, and worked tirelessly to prove her innocence to creditors and law enforcement. I feel like I'm seeing clearly for the first time in 3 years, she told me one evening as we sat in her kitchen, surrounded by stacks of financial documents. It's like I was living in a fog and suddenly someone opened all the windows. I had transferred the money from her secret savings account, almost $50,000 now, to help her cover immediate expenses while the fraud cases were being resolved. Watching her reaction when she saw the balance was one of the most rewarding moments of my life. Dad, you've been saving money for me this whole time? Every month. I knew that someday you'd need your freedom, and I wanted to make sure you had the resources to claim it. She started crying then, not the defeated tears she had shed when Jacob left, but tears of gratitude and relief. I thought I was completely alone. I thought I had nothing. You're never alone, sweetheart, and you've always been stronger than you knew. The police were very interested in Jacob's case. Apparently, my friend Mike's investigation had uncovered enough evidence to charge Jacob with multiple felonies: identity theft, credit fraud, and forgery. When they compared his methods to other cases in their database, they found connections to similar crimes in 4 other states. Detective Morrison, the officer handling Aurora's case, was optimistic about prosecution. We've been tracking this guy for months through other victims' reports. Your daughter's case gives us the strongest evidence we've had so far. But Jacob wasn't going down without a fight. 2 weeks after he had stormed out of Aurora's apartment, he tried to come back. Aurora was at work. She had found a part-time job at a local bookstore to start rebuilding her financial independence, when I heard someone trying to use a key at the front door. I opened it to find Jacob standing there with a duffel bag and an expression of arrogant confidence. "Where's Aurora?" he demanded. "She's not here, and you're not welcome here. This is my home too. I have a right to be here." "Actually, you don't. Aurora had the locks changed, and there's a restraining order against you. You're not supposed to be within 500 feet of this building." His confidence faltered. "Restraining order? Aurora wouldn't do that." "Aurora did do that, with my full support." Jacob's face twisted with rage. "You poisoned her mind against me. She was happy before you interfered." "Jacob, Aurora was starving. She was being financially abused. That's not happiness, that's survival. She needed someone to take care of her. She's not strong enough to handle things on her own. She's stronger than you ever gave her credit for. She's rebuilding her life, and she's doing it without you." Jacob stepped closer, and I could smell alcohol on his breath. "You think you've won something, old man? You think you can just destroy my life and walk away? I didn't destroy your life, Jacob. You did that yourself the moment you decided to use my daughter as a resource instead of loving her as a person. Aurora will come back to me. She always does. She needs me. Aurora doesn't need you. She never did. She needed someone who would love and support her, and that was never you. Jacob's hands clenched into fists, and for a moment I thought he might actually try to attack me. But then he seemed to remember that he was already facing criminal charges and that assaulting Aurora's father would only make things worse. "This isn't over," he said, backing away. "Aurora is my wife. She belongs to me. Aurora belongs to herself, and after she divorces you, she'll be free to build the life she actually wants." He stormed off, but I immediately called Detective Morrison to report the violation of the restraining order. 2 hours later, Jacob was arrested for harassment and violation of a protective order. That evening, when Aurora came home from work, I told her what had happened. I expected her to be upset or frightened, but instead, she just nodded calmly. "I figured he'd try something like that," she said. Jacob never could accept that anyone would choose to leave him. "How do you feel about him being arrested?" She was quiet for a moment, considering the question. "Relieved, mostly. For the first time in 3 years, I don't have to worry about what mood he'll be in when I come home, or whether I've done something to disappoint him. I can just exist." That's when I knew Aurora was going to be okay. She wasn't just surviving Jacob's abuse, she was thriving without it. 6 months later, Aurora's financial situation had improved dramatically. The fraud investigators had successfully proved that Jacob was responsible for the vast majority of debt in her name, and the credit card companies had removed those charges from her credit report. She was working full-time at the bookstore and had been promoted to assistant manager. She had even started dating again, a kind, gentle man named David who treated her with the respect and consideration she deserved. Jacob, meanwhile, was serving 18 months in prison for identity theft and credit fraud. The prosecutor had been able to prove that he had defrauded not just Aurora, but 5 other women across multiple states. His pattern of behavior was so well documented that the judge had imposed the maximum sentence allowed by law. On the anniversary of Jacob's arrest, Aurora and I had dinner at the same Italian restaurant where I had first realized something was wrong. But this time, Aurora ordered whatever she wanted without checking the prices, and she ate every bite with obvious enjoyment. "Dad," she said over dessert, "I want to thank you for not giving up on me." "Sweetheart, I would never give up on you." But I gave up on myself. For 3 years, I let Jacob convince me that I didn't deserve basic necessities, that I wasn't smart enough to handle my own life, that I was lucky to have someone willing to take care of me. Jacob was very good at manipulation. "It's not your fault that you believed him." "Maybe not, but I'm responsible for staying with him as long as I did. I ignored my own instincts, my own needs, my own worth." I reached across the table and took her hand. "Aurora, you're one of the strongest people I know. The fact that you survived 3 years of that treatment and came out ready to rebuild your life proves how resilient you are." She smiled, a real smile, not the forced expression she had worn during the Jacob years. "I feel like I'm finally becoming the person I was meant to be. Not someone's victim, not someone's resource, just me." "And who is that?" "Someone who knows her own worth. Someone who won't settle for being treated badly just because it's easier than fighting back. Someone who understands that love should never require you to make yourself smaller." As we drove home that night, I reflected on everything that had happened. A year ago, I had thought I was being a good father by sending money to support Aurora. I had no idea that my generosity was enabling her abuse. But I had learned something important. Sometimes loving someone means being willing to disrupt their life, even if they resist. Sometimes being a good parent means making decisions that your child doesn't understand or appreciate in the moment. Aurora was free now, financially, emotionally, and spiritually. She had her own apartment, her own job, her own bank account, and most importantly, her own sense of self-worth. She was building relationships based on mutual respect rather than dependency. And I had learned to be a different kind of father, one who supported Aurora's independence rather than her dependence, one who helped her build strength rather than just providing resources. Jacob had taught us both some painful lessons about manipulation, abuse, and the difference between love and control. But he had also, inadvertently, given us something valuable, the knowledge that we were both stronger than we had ever imagined. Aurora didn't need someone to take care of her. She needed someone to believe in her capacity to take care of herself. And once she remembered that capacity, nothing could stop her from claiming the life she deserved. As for me, I had learned that being a protector doesn't always mean fighting someone else's battles for them. Sometimes it means giving them the tools and confidence to fight their own battles. And watching Aurora discover her own strength was the greatest victory I could have asked for. 6 months later, Aurora called me with news that Jacob had been released from prison but had violated his parole within 2 weeks by attempting to contact another one of his former victims. He was back in custody, facing additional charges. "How do you feel about that?" I asked her. "Sad for whoever he tried to hurt next," she said, but not surprised. "Jacob will probably spend the rest of his life looking for people to exploit because he never learned how to build anything real. And you? I'm building something real. Every day I'm building a life based on my own choices, my own values, my own strength. It's not always easy, but it's mine." That's when I knew that Aurora wasn't just free from Jacob, she was free to become whoever she wanted to be. And that freedom was worth every difficult moment we had endured to achieve it. The girl who had once believed she didn't deserve food had become a woman who knew she deserved everything life had to offer. And I couldn't have been prouder to be her father.